Coming up next is a panel discussion on the topic identity cybersecurity, protecting your digital identity over the internet. Give a resounding round of applause to our moderator of this session. We have Valeen Oseh-Ovarah, the cybersecurity professional and CEO at Tisova and founder of the Nwada Foundation, who will introduce and keep this session going along with our panel of experts. We also have Justin Hopkins, the Chief Technology Officer at Binary Lab LLC, as well as Deep Trikannad, the Chief Executive Officer at Acceledgy, as well as Paul Johnson, the President of CyberAegis Team, Inc., and Derek Melber, the VP of Product Engagement and Outreach at QOMPLX. There we have it. Bring them on onto the stage. I'm looking forward to this next session.
Hello, everyone. Are we excited?
Bring it.
That energy, please. I know it's the last day of the conference and everybody's like, oh, I want to go. And we're all tired. But I believe that this is a session that everybody needs to be part of. You need to hear these things. And I have wonderful panelists right here, industry experts. So I'm very excited to have this session with them and also to engage with you. So we need you to be very engaging with us, ask questions as much as possible because we get to answer all of them, right? Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about how to protect your digital identity over the internet. But before we start that, I'm just going to take a little bit of your time to introduce myself and then have that go through for each of the panelists. So my name is Valeen Oseh-Ovarah, not Oseh-Ovarah. It's actually Oseh-Ovarah. I'm Nigerian and I currently work at Meaning. Meaning is a hardware and intelligent software company. So we manufacture Motorola cable modems and routers. And so my role is basically to help resolve any cybersecurity issues, networking issues, internet issues, or product issues for our customers, and also champion and advocate for our customers. Prior to that, I worked as a fraud investigator for BBVA, helping to resolve fraud cases for the bank and our clients as well. And prior to that too, I worked at the UAB Computer Forensics and Research Laboratory as a cyber threat intelligence analyst for big tech companies that you hear of today, and also for law enforcement agencies and for financial institutions that most of you have used or probably have an account with. And being Nigerian, I am the founder of Ndokwa Foundation, which is a girl child initiative in Africa that is set to empower the girl child through mentorship, education, and technology as well. And I'm also the founder of Tisova, which is a cybersecurity startup. I can't say so much about that right now, but hopefully you get to hear more about that. So I'm just going to go right to Derek, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Derek Melber. I currently work at a company called QOMPLX, and QOMPLX is really, I guess, complex. Really what we focus on is identity security for enterprises. So this actual discussion will be a very interesting one because what we really try to do is get down to the identity and secure the identities. And I'm sure we'll get into this as we have our discussion moving through. At QOMPLX, I have the great opportunity to speak at a ton of different events. I probably attend, I don't even know how many events in one year, but a ton of speaking, a ton of talking and helping organizations secure their identities and their entire enterprise. So thank you for having me.
So Paul, over to you.
Yeah, so Paul Johnson, I've been working in Department of Defense cybersecurity for about 22 years, but I'm also, as a passion and as a volunteer, I coach about 120 middle school and high school students in cybersecurity. Talked about this a little bit yesterday, and we've compete in a number of different cybersecurity competitions. The big one is Cyber Patriot, where we are the 9-time national champion out of about 5,000 teams competing.
Amazing. And of course we have, yes, that's really
my name is Deep Trikannad. I'm CEO of Acceledgy, but I have my entire career has been in security. I also work at Akamai at the moment as well, Akamai Technologies. And I know we just finished a bit of security, which is a great kind of segue into this panel. We're missing, unfortunately, our fourth panelist or fifth panelist had a family emergency. Justin, who was announced earlier, he couldn't join us, but he's here with us in spirit. So yeah, and my background is primarily web security, like cloud-based security on the enterprise. So, and also before I hand it back up to Valeen, while personal identity is important to all of us, and it should be, right? We should be doing everything that we can to protect ourselves. But I think the reason we're all here is we represent some type of organization, some type of business that may or may not have employees. So from a CISO standpoint, CTO standpoint, if your employee is vulnerable, that means your business is vulnerable. And so a lot of what we'll be talking about is how personal identity and lack thereof, maybe, or security around personal identity and lack thereof, how it could potentially impact your business and why you should care. Security, unfortunately, is boring. Nobody likes it. It's a pain in the butt. It's like an extra thought, but it's key to success. Breaches cost money, not only in penalties, but in reputation. And so please, I hope that you guys will find something. We want to make it a little bit, conversational as well. So with that, I'll hand it back to Valeen.
So to begin, how many of us have social media accounts? My hands are up because I do have one. And how many of us have email accounts? If you sent an email out today or you received one, okay. And how many of us have bank accounts? Who loves money? So yeah, so everything or every action you take online can potentially compromise your digital presence. So the fact that you have personal information over the internet means that it is subject to breaches, theft, or any form of attack, right? So it is important to protect your personal information, right? And not just doing that, but doing that in a world where the digital environment is growing on a day-to-day basis, okay? So when we talk about digital identity, what is it really? So digital identity basically is a compilation of your information that exists in digital form. And most times we look at it from one side of the lens. And by that, I mean, we only focus on the digital attributes. And if we're looking at the bigger picture, your digital identity actually is not just the digital attributes, but also your digital activities. And this is interesting because your digital attributes, we're talking about things like your date of birth, your medical history, your government issued IDs, your personal identification numbers like your social security numbers, your driver's license, okay? But we forget the other aspect of your digital activities. And by that, I mean like liking, commenting, and sharing, posts on social media platforms, your search history, your purchase history, and things like geotagging. These things are very important. And for someone who has like a background in social media investigations, cybercrime investigations, these are key things that we look out for when we are investigating people or businesses or any entity as it were, which you might be overlooking, but it's also very, very important. So each piece of that information, when you use it alone or you combine them together, it tells a great story or gives the perfect picture about who you are as a person digitally. So you should be focusing on both sides. But as we continue the conversation, I just want to ask, Paul, this is a question I have for you. Because when you Google, you put on Google right now, like, how do you protect yourself digitally, on the internet? One of the key things that you see is, they suggest that you use strong passwords, right? And manage this password. But how important is password management and why should we do it?
Yeah, so I would like to talk a couple of minutes about passwords. So there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that if you're not using 16 characters, your passwords are too weak. The reason for that, there are rainbow tables, there are programs such as Offcrack, and basically those can crack passwords up to 14 characters. So I build in a little bit of a safety margin. So all of my passwords are at least 16 characters. They're truly random. But you can cheat a little bit. For example, if you want to string words together, for example, suitcase, table, microphone, string words together to get it up to 16 characters. But then the really bad news is you really cannot reuse passwords between sites. And sometimes people like to reuse passwords between sites and they have like a little algorithm. So maybe they have a standard password and then for their Facebook password, maybe they'll add FB to the end of it. Unfortunately, that's, people that crack passwords are onto that. So that doesn't do you any good either. So I have probably hundreds of websites that I go to. And so I'm sure you're thinking, well, Paul, how the heck am I going to memorize 200 unique passwords? And you really have to have a password manager. So password managers do a really good job. Okay, so there are good password managers and there are terrible password managers. Some of the good ones have been looked at extensively. A lot of the people that I trust in cybersecurity have exhaustively looked at LastPass, and that's kind of considered a very, very high quality password manager. And I think you can trust that. So one other thing I would like to mention is that this was so NIST announced maybe about 4 years ago that changing passwords actually does not buy you added cybersecurity and causes more problems. I don't think anybody saw that memo. I saw it and rejoiced, but so you don't have to, if your company allows it, I wouldn't bother changing passwords as long as you have nice, good, strong passwords. And you especially do not want to use, there's a lot of browsers that will save your passwords. There are other places. You do not want to store your password anywhere outside of a really top quality password manager like LastPass. Yeah, I think that's probably sums it up nicely.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you brought in the fact that you cannot reuse passwords, because most of the time we don't even know this. So if I have 60 accounts across the board, I need to have 60 passwords. That's what you're saying, right?
Yep.
And you can't do that because it's not realistic. And that's where introducing the use of password managers makes things a lot easier for us. So that's really interesting. But I have another question, and I think this goes to you, Derek. What is the role of multi-factor authentication? What role does it play in protecting your digital identity?
So to piggyback on the whole idea of passwords, right? The concept of multi-factor authentication is to try to, one, enhance the password. So it's not just the password, it's something else. Or we're moving into a world where it's passwordless. And everyone should be using MFA anywhere and everywhere possible. It is a critical part of our security posture and how we can actually implement better security. I think the whole idea of an enterprise, and I know we're not up here to talk about enterprises, but it is important to understand that in an enterprise, you can't go passwordless across the board because you have service accounts, and well, service accounts don't have fingers. They don't have phones. They don't have things that they can input something else. So we're going to have a mixture, but multi-factor authentication is critical. And if you have the opportunity on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, any device that you have to enable multi-factor authentication, it is something that you absolutely 100% should enable to increase the security of protecting your identities.
Interesting. So how does that also play into knowledge-based authentication? There are platforms where you want to sign up to that platform and then you're asked what is the name of your pet, or what community did you grow up in? What is the maiden name of your mother? How vulnerable is this knowledge-based authentication to protecting your digital identity?
Ask the 10 or 15 movie stars a couple of years ago that were hacked. And then they were hacked because their answers were basically on their Facebook or whatever page they were on. I think the idea of answering a question to help you remember your password is kind of antiquated, I would say. It's still out there. We still do it, but we really need to focus more on the password manager. Yeah, you have to move into a new philosophy. And you almost want to answer the questions wrong, right? Because if your information's out there and someone can dig that information up, then it would be rather easy to figure out the answers to these questions. And I sometimes, when I'm answering these questions, I'm like, maybe I should just put in wrong stuff. It's kind of like teaching your kids to talk wrong. And in that way, you're less vulnerable to those types of attacks.
I'd like to follow up on that. I think these questions are one of the biggest security holes ever conceived, because just as Derek said, you can look it up sometime somewhere else. And so I actually use my password manager to generate answers to the questions and then store those answers to the questions in my password manager. And so, yeah, it's a little extra work, but again, is a huge security hole.
I think, Deep has something to say.
Yeah, just real quick. So just by, there's, a few of us left, just by show of hands, how many of you actually use password managers? Just so we got 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So please, for just general hygiene, I'm sure all of us have had to take photos off of our phones because we had to make space for new photos. And that's kind of just photo hygiene. For your security hygiene, please at least explore, like Paul mentioned, LastPass is one of them. I have friends using 1Password. There's a few that are good. Google your top 10, pick the top, whichever one you feel good about, but make sure that it's not one of the bottom ones or not on the list. So yes, password hygiene is critical key. I do the same thing that Paul does. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt. The beauty of LastPass, by the way, for those who don't use it, I have it on my phone, I have it on my computer. It auto fills for you. You don't have to I don't know if you remember this, but one time we had a notebook in our drawer and we had to actually look up passwords to type it in. Now it's like the phone knows, it uses your Face ID and it auto fills your password. So these 16 to 20 character long passwords that are all random with an asterisk and a %sign and whatnot, you don't have to remember any of that. You have one master password, your face, and now you have all your passwords available to you.
Yeah, I like the fact that you did bring it to bear that, we should have that security hygiene. Every time you wake up in the morning, if you're a lady, you have your skincare routine. You should have a security routine as well, just to stay safe. So we agree that password managers are an effective way to stay safe, but it is not always enough. So what then is phishing, and how can we stay safe from or identify the phishing scams and stay safe from all of the scams that are happening?
Me?
Yes.
So phishing is basically it's social engineering, right? So all of us want to click on, oh, we got a free iPad, click here to get it, right? Or you're some prince in some foreign country is like, oh, I need to send $1 million to my friend and I'll give you 20% to do this. And if any of us have employees, your employees, it may not be you. It could be you, but it's kind of lack of knowledge. It was mentioned earlier on the previous fireside chat. None of us, how do I say this? All of us don't know what we don't know. And that's part of the challenge. And you can't know everything. But phishing is playing to, it's kind of clickbait for email, effectively what it is. So you'll get, an unsolicited email offering something. It'll look legit. Just the other day, I got the most recent one. I got a text that said, you just bought something for $700 and something. If this is you, then, or if you did buy it, then just ignore this text. If you didn't buy it, click here. And then it asked me for my email address after I clicked onto it. and I look, and there's simple ways to actually check for phishing. Has everybody heard phishing? For those that don't have LastPass or password managers, just so I can define what it is. Yes, so phishing, it's phishing, not like fishing with the rod. And what it basically is, it's a social engineering experiment, and it doesn't take very much effort to create one of these. So from the hacker's perspective, it's very easy, and they have these farms that do it. It's basically email marketing effectively. It's like what we do legitimately in terms of email marketing, but it's you have a list of email addresses that could be all Gmail accounts. It could be Hotmail accounts. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be corporate accounts. They can be, but as long as they're legit, somebody gets an email saying, I will give you a free iPad for filling out something, or, you won a contest 2 weeks in Hawaii or whatever it is, just click here and give me your information. There's simple ways to actually just verify it. One we talked about earlier, like any website you go to, if it doesn't have that little lock at the top, immediately close your browser. Like, do not engage with that website. So what that lock represents is encryption between you and your computer and the server that you're trying to communicate with. If anything is offering something like your bank, Amazon, whomever it is, if they don't have that little lock, it's illegitimate, because none of these businesses will do business without that little lock. And what that means is you're communicating out in the open. Like, all your information is now free for anyone in between you, your browser, and the server. And there's potentially hundreds of other servers in between. And so they can all see that traffic. So that's first thing. Second is look at the domain name. And this is where it gets, you just got to be vigilant. It comes down to hygiene as well. So Google with 3 O's.com, right? Or maybe it's google.info or google.something that it's like, this is interesting. This is not really Google, because it costs $11 or maybe cheaper some cases for me to buy Google with 4 O's or with 2 L's or 2 G's or something, and then brand my page that you land on looks identical to Google, or it looks identical to Amazon with 2 Z's or 2 N's, right? And so the phishing attack is they offer something, you click on it, everything you go to looks legitimate, looks like you're actually there. It's your bank account, Bank of America, or whatever it is. And you just have to verify the domain. Sometimes they'll get around this by doing like Bank of America some gibberish.com. It has to be right in front of the .com. Literally, like anything that's in between Bank of America and .com, and there's some other gibberish in between, illegitimate site, run away, like close your browser, just don't engage. And so phishing attacks are just that. They look legitimate, but they're kind of geared towards stealing your information, getting some type of personal information from you that they can use then to get somewhere else.
So I'd like to follow up a couple things. So we keep talking about password managers. So that's another nice thing about the password manager is you've put the URL for the different sites in the password manager. And if you go to a site that's slightly misspelled, then the password manager won't recognize it and won't fill it in. So it kind of does the spelling checker for
Great
the
point.
name of the site.
Great point.
And then the other thing, so Deep mentioned about when you're communicating between, from your computer to some other company or whatever, that does hop through a whole bunch of other different points, and you have absolutely zero control over that. And so, you check the lock, but then for email, there is no lock. Okay, well, unless you buy some extra programs, but if you're just using Yahoo or Gmail or whatever, and you're sending email to some other company, everybody on those intermediate points has complete and full access to that email. So you can never ever put anything personal in an email.
No social security numbers, no bank accounts, none of that. Like
no credit card numbers.
Yeah. One thing actually I just remembered while you're talking. So MFA, so multi-factor authentication, similar to, you might have seen the number 2 FA, which is 2-factor authentication. That's just like, and again, it's another step. So if you have a Gmail account, Gmail actually offers it with their Google Authenticator. It's free. You don't have to pay for anything, but it's like a real-time validation on your password. What that means is like, okay, so once you've put your password in using LastPass, great, fine and dandy, you're in, kind of. But if you turn on 2FA or MFA, it'll real time either text you or send you an email. There are different notifications for this, but it'll send you a code. If any of us have Apple devices, a lot of time we've tried to log into something using iCloud keychain or something, and you have to put in that code that you get on your phone. That's effectively 2FA or MFA in action. And so it takes maybe 10 minutes to set up tops. If you don't know what you're doing, then maybe an hour, but it's critically important. And it's like real-time validation before you can actually get into the site. So if someone steals your password and your email account and you have 2FA turned on, it'll notify you with a text or something saying, hey, this is your code. And if you never ask for that code, you know someone's trying to hack in. And so, but if without that code, they can't actually get in. And that's it's kind of the front door. Unfortunately, there's ways to bypass that front door, but at minimum, you should have a lock on your front door. And that's what we're advocating for.
So to add to what you said, I received today, I think every day I receive at least 2 smishing attacks. And so smishing is like SMS phishing. So the phishing part comes through the email. You say the link, you click on the link. If you're not aware, you put in your details, you're scammed, you're compromised. But what they're doing right now is they're sending you SMS messages. And it's still the same thing, but you just receive it on your phone. And the funny part is I did get one and it had the name of someone that I know, but that's not her number. So how did you get that person's name? Potentially it could be from social media. And this person, I only have that interaction with her on social media, but on LinkedIn. So that person knows that I have a connection on LinkedIn that is called this person. They've seen my interaction with that person and they are targeting me using someone that I know. So that's smishing attack when you receive it on your phone. And it's very popular. And one thing that we need to be critical about is what you do online has consequences offline. And this goes to, let's say, our higher education students. What scammers are doing right now, there's what we call the phone scams. So they can call you on the phone and tell you about a job or tell you about anything that's ongoing. And this has really affected a lot of international students. I'm an international student in the US. And so in July, 3 Chinese students lost $800,000 to phone scam. And in November, an international student in the University of Illinois lost $300,000 to phone scam. And you'll be asking yourself, how did they get the number? Social media or job portals because you're looking for a job. And for us international students, one of the key things that we're scared of is to be sent back to our home country. And so when they call you and tell you, oh, we found your profile somewhere, you're involved in a criminal activity, and you should pay this amount you want to pay because you don't really know how the system works. And this is not just subject to international students, even higher education students. So there was a report by Federal Trade Commission that stated that people in their 20s to their 30s were twice as much likely to lose money to online scam. And that remained the same for those set of people too. They find it really hard to report that they have been scammed. So if you have this information and you know someone who's a friend or a sister, you need to let them know there's this smishing attack going on, there's a phone scams going on, and you need to protect yourself. And all of this potentially leads back to what you put out on social media. You need to be careful how much information you dish out. So I take a photo with my pet and I call my pet's name and I put that on social media. Is this going to affect me potentially? Like, how is this going to be useful or not useful? And you have your birthday, you celebrate it, even on Facebook, you're reminded of someone else's birthday. Is that really good for me or not? And of course, you have maybe all these pop-up quizzes that comes up on your social media platforms. I don't know if you've seen any of the pop-up quizzes. And they ask you things like, oh, who do you want to be in the future or what those are avenues for cyber criminals to actually leverage or compromise your profile or your account and steal any information that you have. So it's very important that social media is great, but it is one of the biggest source of information about anybody. And if you're active, especially for us ladies, I know I've taken a lot of pictures since the conference started, and but you should be mindful, especially with tagging. When you take a photo and you put it out there, you're tagging. For instance, you're tagging I'm at Mandalay Bay, or you take a photo with your address behind it, that is golden for social media investigators or cybercrime investigators. That is something that we're looking out for to, timestamps, like what's going on, where did you put it out, when was it put out, and how is that information useful to the story that you're trying to tell, or the report that you're developing or creating. And law enforcement, they love such. So as you're mindful of your digital attributes, you're giving out information back and forth, be mindful of what you put out on social media. The internet never forgets. So if there's an information that you're like, in 10 years from now, I don't really want to see that information. Is it really worth it to put it out there? Okay, so I think that's really important. But before we end all of the conversation, I just wanted to ask a very critical question to you, Deep. What is the impact of this on businesses?
I mean, oh my gosh. It depends on how big your business is. Equifax, I don't know if you guys knew this, Equifax, one of the credit agencies a few years back, they were a little bit laissez-faire with their security. And nothing against music majors, but they hired basically a musician to be their CISO. And it's just probably not, I mean, I'm sure in any case. But they got hacked. I think it was like 100 million, like credit info. They had to ultimately pay, I think the average was $146 per record stolen is what they had to pay. And it was like in the hundreds of millions or something. And so needless to say, it was a cost, but I would say that's actually not the cost, or that's a small cost is what I would say. Because that's just a penalty. Your reputation, your potential existing customers that are putting food on your table, if you get breached because you're not diligent about your password protection, your policies, your company policies, enforcing it, or educating your employees on how to identify phishing attacks and things like that, that impacts your business and your growth potentially. Like it could not only ruin you financially because of the penalties, but then you have no way to recoup because now your reputation is also soiled, unfortunately. So, so the four of us here are in the security space and have been in the security space. So it's like we walk, talk, eat, drink security. But if you're not in security, we're not asking you to become like security experts, right? Like we mentioned the password manager, it's like if you've downloaded an app on your phone, literally the password manager is an app on your phone. So I believe you guys can do it. Doing things like identifying phishing attacks, like making sure there's a lock on, like these things that we talked about you don't need to get a degree in it. These are kind of just security hygiene to protect yourself and your company from financial ruin, from reputational ruin, and kind of all that. I don't know, like that's the impact. It's measurable, but it varies, unfortunately. And none of us want to be there.
Yeah, and when employees are not able to, do these things that we identified, like, and then something happens, malicious, who bears the cost, and how does that even impact the business or the employee as it were?
Wait, sorry, I didn't catch the last
So
part.
if you are an employee and you don't use a password manager, or you see an email and you click on it and something happens, you lose money, or you receive an email from the CEO asking you to send money, but that's not even the CEO.
Yeah, so it's unfortunately, it's literally, so what we described, unfortunately, for better or worse, and some of you already know this, it's the tip of the iceberg. It literally, like managing your passwords, making sure that there's a lock on your browser and not clicking on things you shouldn't be clicking on, literally is the tip of the iceberg. And by doing those things, if you do click on something you're not supposed to click on from inside your corporate network, now you've literally just opened the door to someone you don't trust into your corporate network. So everybody, like, who's heard of this term ransomware attack? Right? So just a quick definition, it's basically somebody has access to your documents, your financial records, your key critical customers, your invoices, your whatever it is you have that's important to you, your email. They'll encrypt everything, put their own 16-character password on that encryption, and not give it to you until you give them some money. And so now your data is completely, it's encrypted, it's there, you can see it, you just can't open it because you don't have the 16-character or more password to decrypt it. And so that's an example. And many, and unfortunately, especially SMBs and mid-market enterprises and customers, they're incredibly kind of prone to this because they don't have the expertise to deal with that ransomware attack. And so they'll just be like, all right, it's $10,000, the ROI on $10,000 or $50,000. I'll pay it. Just make it happen. Just go, like, give me the access. And sometimes, just like, unfortunately, with people, when there's ransom, sometimes you get your stuff back, sometimes you don't. It's just better not to have to deal with it and do these kind of security hygiene things. So protect yourself, protect your business. And so.
Yeah, so I think we have about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, please, let us know. Just stand up, go that way, and we'll try to answer all of the questions. But to you, Derek, what are some of the general cybersecurity practices that we should be aware of, just to wrap up this session before we start taking the questions?
So I think I'll just kind of summarize what we've really hit, right? And I'll kind of give you some guidance. First of all, there are websites out there dedicated to teaching you how to look for a phishing attack. So go search, how do I detect a phishing attack or a smishing attack? And it will detail for you exactly what to click on, exactly what to look for. The one thing I wanted to point out about MFA that you may or may not know is it's not a one-time configure it and you're done. You have to do it every single place where you have that identity. Okay. An identity would be an email or it's a log on or something. So it's unfortunately not, hey, I turned on MFA and I'm good. No, you got to go everywhere. And Deep also mentioned you may have different things that are asked of you. You go to Google Authenticator, go to Microsoft Authenticator, go to this Authenticator. There's I just sent you a code in your email. Go look at that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to that as well.
And I'm sorry, real quick, to add on to that. So Google Authenticator, one of the things that I do, and so, kind of best practices, I guess, one of the points is I use that's Google sign-on for a lot of my login or sign up, because if it's all at Google, and I don't know, that's potentially, I'm creating controversy here, but this is what I do. I use Google to authenticate with everything. A lot of times you'll see the options, like I can use Microsoft, I can use Google, I can use GitHub or Facebook or whatever it is. I don't recommend using Facebook, but there's many options for that. And then with Google, they have Google Authenticator, so that if you sign in to a new site or sign up to a new site using Google and you have MFA turned on, in that scenario, it's the same kind of experience to log in. So keep that in mind to simplify your usability, please. Not working. Battery's dead. You want to take this one?
1, 2.
There you go. Cool.
Hello.
There we go.
So I want to thank all of you. I've been listening. I'm a cybersecurity guy too. There's one thing. I don't want you to take this personal. I don't think that we, as a security community, I don't think we do a good job. And what do I mean by that? Communication. So we always expect that everybody knows what we know. We always think that
100%.
Exactly. We always think that they are advanced enough to take those precautions. But I find it very hard
100%.
that I have people around me that they have PhD and they don't understand all of these hulabaloo that we talked about, doing this, doing that, about our identity. So I thought that, as part of that community, I thought that we have to be innovative enough to be able to teach them, how better to be that, to protect
Agreed.
themselves.
Agreed.
Without giving them all of the complexity of what we know. That is one aspect. Please, because I'm just gonna stop and go.
Please.
The second thing is, I started clamoring in my company that they need to separate CISO from CDO. CDO is Chief Data Officer. from CCO, which is Chief Communication Officer. I started clamoring, but guess what? The government and few entities are the ones doing that right now.
Yeah.
The majority of Fortune 500, they are not doing that. You know what is happening? We have zero way of helping our fellow employee. Guess what? They are still falling for that phishing attack that you mentioned. We actually created that phishing company ourselves. We send them phishing. And guess what? You'll be so surprised how many people click that, despite we have them to go through so many training. If you talk to somebody said he was from Department of Defense here, which is really good. If you talk to them, they will tell you. I happen to know one that works there, and he said, I hate them when they told me I have to go for 8 hours because I clicked one stupid link. That is exactly what is going on with that. Please, can you guys help us in a way that, I know you talk to so many places. You say you've been to so many, conferences. You talk in so many places. Can we start talking? Maybe the current Chief Communication Officer for the whole population, which is FBI, they try SQL injection, some worms, but guess what? They're not spending enough to tell average people. Somebody like us, we know what they are talking about, but average people that just use computer to do their daily things, they don't even have a clue how to even go about all of this. Can we, with your expertise, please help us see how we can evangelize better? Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, James. You guys.
Yeah, I think he was just doing more of a suggestion.
No, and candidly, security is hard. Unfortunately, it's hard. In fact, the internet itself, back in the 90s when it was kind of released to the world, security was an afterthought, right? Like, because it's hard. And we were just talking about this last night over drinks. Security is also like whack-a-mole for those that are in the industry. So what we lock down today and we feel good about today on the 21st, tomorrow will be exposed. So it's a moving target and it's whack-a-mole. You hit the one here and then another one pops up and you hit that one, and that's just lifelong exercise. So to your point, I mean, I feel like the internet itself, you mentioned something, or somebody mentioned earlier about Web3, that kind of helps us move in the right direction. But again, there's no silver bullet, unfortunately. It's more like it's risk management. It's how close can we get in I feel like that's unfortunately it's a bad answer. I'm not happy with it myself, but it's about how the closer we can get to secure, the better. And it's never going to be 100% secure. If you have a computer that's turned on, sorry, I'm talking a lot. If you have a computer that's turned on and connected to the internet, you're exposed, period. Like, and just know that going in. The only secure computer is one that is unplugged.
Paul, do you have something?
So, yeah, so James, it sounds like you're already doing, so one very good practice is for the IT group to send out phishing attacks and see, and then follow up. Hey, good job. You got this right. Wrong. You got this wrong. Okay. And just keep doing that. And in terms of like password length and things like that, that's all configurable. You can configure Windows for minimum password length, things like that, Linux. So yeah, you got to just keep working and keep trying to get people to be more secure.
Yeah. So I think we have another question.
Sorry, they give me.
Oh, excellent.
So I've been using LastPass forever, so I'm there. I even have MFA in a lot of ways, but I've been getting lately, like Wells Fargo Bank is, for instance, they specifically won't let you use Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. They want you to hold their own kind of key, and they've said those encryption mechanisms, those tools are not foolproof enough for them, and that scared me. So can you comment a little bit on why they're not using one of the public authenticators?
I mean, it's more of an opinion. I don't know definitively. I don't know the Wells Fargo CISO or anything. But technically they're the same. Like in terms of their approach to security, and like they would be the same. Maybe they might use different hash algorithms and whatnot for encryption, but the process is pretty mature. And I would suspect they're all the same. I have the same for E-Trade. E-Trade was like, no, you got to use this one. And I suspect it's mainly because their processes, whoever put their stuff in place, they didn't architect it in a way to be flexible. And that's my 2 cents, is like that. That's when they designed it that way. And now they're selling you on the other stuff's not secure enough. That's why you have to use ours. That's my 2 cents. I don't know what you guys
Yeah,
think.
and it could be that the CISO or someone there read something about an authenticator that it could be bypassed or it could be spoofed or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, well, we don't want that liability." It could be a lawyer thing, right? I mean, who knows? I honestly don't think that it makes the others bad just because Wells Fargo says we think it's bad, right? Because who knows what the actual reason is, and that's why I was saying I was just telling everyone you have to set up multiple MFA, and each of them could be different, and that goes to that point.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay, our time is up. I think we can take one.
Yeah.
Oh,
we're
perfect.
out of
I'll
time.
be really quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Software as a service. I have now heard, I was out on another conference. I'm not an attendee. I'm actually the technician back there. Ooh. Ransomware as a service.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
And could you just real quick just describe what's going on with that? 'Cause that just blew my mind.
Yeah, so you can get ransomware as a service. They have helplines that are very, very excellent.
The customer support.
Customer support, yeah. And they basically share in your profits.
You guys have heard of dark web, the phrase dark web, right? So there's a whole ecosystem in the dark web. Like, for example, the previous gentleman, we're talking about IoT. IoT are considered in the industry, they're considered headless because there's no computer monitor. There's no keyboard on it. They run kind of by themselves. So the challenge with IoT is they can get hacked and no one will know. However, once they're hacked and they're commandeered, they can be controlled. They're just kind of dormant. They're asleep. And so these hackers hack refrigerators, TVs, little like set-top box devices, whatever. And they have hundreds of thousands of these devices on call. And there's a service online, I forget what it is, but you can go to this website, and actually it's a normal website, .com something. You put in your credit card and you're like, I want to take bankofamerica.com down between these hours. And you pay for them, and you'll literally like recruit all of these IoT devices to hit bankofamerica.com at the same time. And it's called a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service attack. So it's coming from everywhere, and it's a legit, like they're just requesting the homepage maybe, or maybe they're submitting registrations or submitting contact requests or whatever. And you can, those are software as a services that you can just swipe your credit card and you're like, I'm going to send 10 million requests within this 5-minute window just to take you guys down. They could be like to Ticketmaster during U2 tickets. And they're available for kind of, if you have money and credit card, no big deal. So yes.
Yeah. I think that's all we can take.
Yeah, we're out of time.
Time's up. So
Thank you guys.